Wanted to do some teaching videos on the book of John. I don't know how many I'm going to get to do, probably based on people's interest, but the book of John is really interesting. John wrote his gospel to the non-Jewish world, you could say. He wrote it to a world that didn't know the Jewish traditions, the Jewish religion, and so it's written in a really different way than the other gospels. Just the way that he starts, the thing that he opens with is really interesting. And you can tell that he's not writing to the same religious group as the other Gospels are written to, just by his opening. So let's just take a look at the book of John. Now, this isn't designed to be a super in-depth look at the book of John. It's really just designed to give some basic teaching points on the book in general. It says this: "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God." Now, the word that we translate into W-O-R-D in this, the word, is a Greek word that is pronounced logos, and or logos. I mean, I don't know how they pronounced it actually, but but it was used often in Greek and secular philosophy leading up to the time that John wrote his gospel. And it actually sort of morphed meanings throughout the 1,000-year history before the Bible showed up. And so what's interesting is just some of the uses that it had gained in the years leading up to this. One of them from a guy named, this is hard to say, Heraclitus. Good name, difficult to say. In 535 to 475 BC, he used it to describe a principle of order and knowledge, which is interesting. This logos that John is identifying here, philosophy had said that it's a principle of knowledge and order. And that kind of fits because we get the word logical from the word logos. Also in secular philosophy, the Stoics had used the word logos to mean the divine animating principle pervading the universe. And so, so basically, they saw that the universe had life, had movement, had animation, you could say. And so they said this logos was the divine, force, I suppose, that animated the universe. Aristotle applied the term to just mean a reasoned discourse, in rhetoric. And so you can find all those on Wikipedia really simply. But the idea here is that philosophy used this word logos. And then oddly, John just goes ahead and uses it. And so what he says is that in the beginning was the Word, was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, or the Word was with God. And so he's giving us this idea that we have God, and then we have this sort of philosophical principle that is reason. It's sort of this power that animates the universe. In some senses, it just meant it meant like a rhetoric term. But then he says something interesting here. He says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Well, that's a really interesting statement because what he's doing is he's taking these two ideas, God and the Logos, and he's just slamming them together. He's just kind of like, just melting them together and saying, you know what, those are actually the same thing. And there's a couple of reasons to me why that's interesting. Number one, it's like he's gathering up 1,000 years of philosophy, and he's saying, all those things that you noticed in the universe, those are God. Now, I wouldn't say that he's probably telling a secular audience that you understand God clearly, but he's saying, you've noticed maybe the hem of his garment, or you've noticed little pieces about the universe, and what you're noticing is that God exists, or that God is out there. And so, in the church, we have this tendency to divide the sacred and the secular. We want to say that everything outside the church is secular, everything inside the church is sacred. And we don't use that word much, but it had alliteration with secular, so I used it. But the idea there is that we want to say that the secular world is out there. They know nothing of God, they know nothing of truth, they know nothing of the good. But the sacred world, the church, the ministries, the things like that, those are the ones that know the truth, they know about God, and things like that. Well, the problem with that is that doesn't seem to be what John thought. I mean, John basically told him that you in philosophy noticed some great things about the universe, and those things that you noticed, those are God. Now, again, I wouldn't say that he is telling people that they totally understand God, that they understand Him in entirety, but neither do we. We I would say, understand more about God because we have Scripture, but we're all a little in the dark, in regards to God's exactitude and His infinitude and all these things. And so he uses a really interesting tactic here. He takes what people already know about the universe, and he ties that into the idea of God. I think it's just an ingenious way of drawing his readers in. Let's read on. It says, "Through Him all things were made." So this is Him in this sentence is the God Logos, the Logos God, which he describes as the God. So he says, "Through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made." So not only is it these other things we said, but this Logos, who is God, is also the Creator. So not only did He animate the universe, He created it. "In Him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it." Yeah, we all understand light in the darkness. I have these lights right here that I'm probably running 1,200 watts of lights just in this little room. It's pretty dark in here, but even my smallest light could light up this whole room in some sense, even if it was totally dark. And light just tends to cut through darkness. And so it's a neat way that he chooses to describe that the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. It sort of describes the darkness as this, unintelligent, pervading presence, that there's light, and the light is intelligence, it's reason, it's logic, it's the divine principle that governs the universe. It animates the universe, but the darkness doesn't understand that. He uses this philosophical term, but he says the darkness doesn't get it. But this God is the light of people, and He's shining on people constantly. But the darkness doesn't understand.